Okay, we are live, I believe.
All right.
Hello, welcome to whoever and whatever. I haven't. I don't think I've hosted a live show in a very long time.
It's been
I've
a
been
while.
doing a lot of like patron chats where I don't have to like. I can just be like, hey guys, I don't have to
You
like,
know who I am.
welcome to my channel. I mean, again, people should know who you are, but if you'd like to introduce yourself in case they don't know who you are, or actually, I mean, do introduce yourself. I'll allow
Okay.
that. But like also, um,
We'll allow it.
into I think I on Instagram got it right, but if not, like, what is your experience with the works of George R. Martin? Like, what have you read or seen or know or
hmm
whatever
Okay.
before House of the Dragon?
Yes. So I'm Bethany from Beautifully Bookish Bethany. We sometimes like the same books and sometimes really don't, and co-host Chapter 3 podcast. So, been friends a while now. Um, Game of Thrones. I've never seen the show. And I read 2.5 of the books years ago, like more than 10 years ago, I would say.
Okay,
So,
so you probably
um,
forgot most of the details.
yeah, I mean, I remember some things from the first book. Like, there are some things that stick out to me, and then I know some stuff just from it being in the cultural zeitgeist, like, I think
You know who
he's
Jon Snow is.
I know who Jon Snow is.
And you know that Jon Snow knows nothing. Maybe you don't know that.
I don't know that.
Okay.
So yeah, so not much. I didn't go into this with a lot of knowledge, but Leanna eventually talked me into watching House of the Dragon.
Well, it's partly because while we were watching Rings of Power, because
hmm
simultaneously House of the Dragon was airing, and you were watching Rings of Power, but not House of
Right,
the Dragon. And I was
right.
like, every single week, I'm like, Bethany, there's this other show happening right now that I promise you is 10 million times better than this. And you were like, I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in Rings of Power. And I was dying inside.
You know what? I'm glad I didn't watch them at the same time though, because I just don't think they're comparable.
Well,
Like they're
as I've
such
said 1
different
million, as I've
shows.
said 1 million times, the like food metaphor I've used is like that Rings of Power's plot is like too little butter scraped over too much bread, as Bilbo Baggins would have it. And that House of the Dragon, each episode is like a burrito that has too many fillings and you can't quite like fold it over because it's like bursting. So like having this like absolute thin, stretched nothing of a plot versus the one that's like we don't have time for any dead space. We have so much plot to get through. It's a little bit like jarring to go between the two.
Yeah, well, and also the tone and the vibes of the shows are so vastly different. So I will say having watched House of the Dragon now, it makes a lot more sense to me why people because they were airing at the same time, why people were so like hating on Rings of Power so much. I think it might have done better if they hadn't been like simultaneous.
I can tell you
Uh,
there's
you know.
no point at which Rings of Power could have aired that I would have liked it. It just
Maybe
made
not
a bad
you.
situation worse.
Maybe not you, maybe other people, but I still like I'm glad I didn't watch them together, but I am glad you eventually talked me into watching House of the Dragon. I
I like that they aired at the same time just because it was like there are certain this is not a Rings of Power stream, but there are certainly like invalid criticisms of Rings of Power, people who
Mhm,
are bigoted in all of the different ways you can be bigoted. But
right.
there's also a lot of people that just didn't like the show. And when people were like, oh, you don't like strong female characters, that's why you don't like Rings of Power. And you're like, House of the Dragon is just fine. So I don't think that's it.
Yeah. Yeah. No. No. It was a mix of people not liking it for various reasons. So, yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So going in, I mean, I told when you, as I was like wearing you down, and you were like, well, I haven't seen Game of Thrones. And I was like, it doesn't
Mhm,
matter. You could watch
mhm.
it without ever having seen Game of Thrones. Was I correct?
You were correct. Yeah. Well, because it takes place so far before, um, it doesn't feel like you need to know much going into it.
Well, but Rings of Power does rely on you knowing the Lord of the Rings.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I wasn't talking about Rings
No,
of
but I'm
Power.
saying because Rings of Power takes place thousands of years before Lord of the Rings.
Oh,
So
yeah,
just
yeah,
because
yeah.
House of the Dragon takes place before, it could still like do a
True.
lot of things where, like, it's
True.
assuming
That's
you
fair.
know.
That's a good point. No, it doesn't really assume that you know anything. I don't Yeah. I mean, I think there's probably some allusions to things. Beth, the chat window is live. I see your comments. I don't see any other ones.
Yeah.
Hi. Hey. Um, but yeah, I think I think I did fine going in. Like, I think there are references to things that probably end up being in Game of Thrones is what it seemed like the prophecy thing or something, maybe. I don't know. But yeah, I don't think you really need to know anything to watch it.
Yeah, the prophecy thing is kind of new. It's not
Mm,
in Fire and Blood. Um, hello. And it's not really in Game of Thrones, except in the so far as it's called A Song of Ice and Fire, like that book series.
mhm,
Um, it's yeah, there's never like this explicit prophecy, the like akin to what we have in House of the Dragon. And certainly not one that's like from the Targaryens themselves. There are a lot of prophecies in the Song of Ice and Fire. Um, and so people are speculating about what those things mean and about who's going to like defeat the threat from the north, etc. And like the prince that like Azor Ahai is like prophesied like savior type figure that everyone's like, who
mhm,
is Azor Ahai? So like in theory, that would probably be linked to the type of prophecy that we get in House of the Dragon. But Fire and Blood, as you know from me, is written like a history book. So there
mhm.
aren't even scenes where characters are having dialogue. Like there's no scene in which like Viserys is talking to Rhaenyra. So like if Viserys ever did privately tell Rhaenyra about a prophecy, no historian, i.e. the person writing Fire and Blood, would
Would know.
know it. And so
Mhm,
like that's one of the things that was kind of like amazing with Fire and Blood, which was like testament to the writers, because unlike with Game of Thrones, where like a lot of scenes have been written by George R. R. Martin, so all you have to do is basically just like adapt it as written. Whereas
mhm.
Fire and Blood, there are no scenes that are written other than like, oh, there was this famous occasion on which these things happened, and maybe like one line if it's like iconic for history where they're like famously the king here said, and this was like talked about for ages. But there's no like, moment to moment scenes. So
Mhm.
the writers of House of the Dragon had to say, okay, here's what happens in history. And just like any like historical movie nowadays, when we're like something about the Tudors or something about the Hundred Years' War, like anyone that's writing a screenplay for that is like, well, we know what the war was, we know who the king was, we know there were these council meetings, so like let's like dramatize how we imagine that might have happened. So that's kind of what they had to do with House of the Dragon, was like, well, we know this
Mm.
was the succession, and here were the deaths, and here were the big decisions, but like, what
How do
did
we
they
then
say,
turn
like
it
in the
into a
room where it
story?
happened?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So I think the
that's interesting.
writers of House of the Dragon
They
like
did a
really did.
fantastic job, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
No, it's really good. I'm glad I watched it. I will say, because in general, I haven't really watched HBO shows because I know they're gritty. I guess they like to be. So it was intense. It was definitely a little bit of an adjustment. I mean, I knew it was going to be, but even knowing going in, I was like, oh wow, this is a lot.
I think
But
I did my
very
best to
compelling.
warn you that like, okay, but
You
if you
did,
do
you
watch
did.
it, like
No, you did, but even so, I don't know that I could have been, like, fully prepared. And
yeah.
it starts off in the very first episode.
Well, I think in my opinion, the first episode is arguably the hardest to watch. Like for like, just like
Yeah.
visually difficult. I mean, because there's story-wise maybe more horrifying things that happen, but like in terms of like what's visually depicted, the first episode is so harrowing.
It's a lot,
So
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I struggle with watching it, and I watch a lot of like violent things.
Yeah. It was
The
definitely rough.
childbirth scene is it's a lot.
Whew. But you know what? I know we've talked about this before, but I really love the fact that it does spend so much time on things like the horror that can come with childbirth and, like, having children and stuff, like, because it does such a realistic job. Okay, there was a scene, I mean, it's, like, awful, but also I was really excited about how, like, accurate it was. Episode 1 is Scarring, yeah. Because there's the episode where Rhaenyra has just given birth, and Alicent wants to see the baby, and she walks like, struggles, but, like, having literally just given birth, walks the baby there, and the thing about it is, like, normally you see stuff like that and people they're not realistic about post-childbirth, but the moment where afterwards she walks away and you see, like, a trail of blood behind her, I was like, like, because you do, like, after you have I've had 2 kids, right? Like, after you give birth, you bleed a lot for the first
Oh, did you have to
while.
walk the baby to your mother-in-law as well so that she could sneer and
Thankfully, no. But, but yeah, it's, I just was really impressed at how they, like, realistically depicted some of those things that people tend to shy away from and don't talk about. I thought it was really good.
Yeah, and the fact that, again, they kind of give equal time to
Mhm.
childbirth and to, like, fighting and jousting and battling and whatever, um, which I think, well, 1, because you so rarely see it, so it's just refreshing to see it, but 2, in the way that, like, it shows them as, like, it's by giving them equal screen time, it gives them equal importance and kind of showcases how, like, the battle of the bed, and the battle of the field, that, like, that people are bleeding and dying for these, like, goals and for the success of their people or their families in different ways, but in no less harrowing ways. And that,
Yeah.
like, the fact that this conflict, that it's at the heart of House of the Dragon, is between 2 mothers. Because,
Mhm.
like, Alicent and Rhaenyra, like, they're creating a civil war based on, like, who should, like, about the succession, but it's, like, these mothers that are going to these extreme lengths, and, like, it's a lot to, like, be like, "Oh, you're gonna make the country go to war over this," but, like, watching how painful it is to, like, bring about these children, it adds a layer of, like, I kind of get why you would feel so strongly about these things, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I definitely agree, and I think it it does a good job of unpacking how they get to the relationship that they have by the end, and it's so tragic in a lot of ways because they are friends as children, but you see, I don't know, I one thing that I think is really fascinating about them is that Alicent, I think, is bitter because she has just gone along with what was expected of her and put up with it regardless of what it is, and the fact that Rhaenyra is, taking a lover and, like, getting to explore her sexuality in ways that Alicent isn't able to. It's like, I feel like you can see, like, the seeds of just bitterness over that as a starting point,
Which is
and it's
actually something
interesting.
that they changed from the book. In the
Mm,
book, Rhaenyra and Alicent aren't, like, childhood friends or anything. Like, the only relationship they have is that, like, this young woman marries Rhaenyra's father, and everyone's like, "Hmm, that's kinda sus." This young woman is like, you know and Viserys, is extremely different in the book, but, George R. R. Martin loves the Viserys that we get in the show. He thinks it's
oh,
an
yeah.
improvement on his own writing. He thinks an improvement on his own Viserys. So, like, the Viserys in the book, like, the same events essentially happen, but, like, it's just like the how this came to be is just so much more tragic and interesting in the show. Because in the book, it's more the sense of Viserys is just kind of like, things will work themselves out. I just kind of want to live my life and be king and kind of, can't we all just get along? But he's not like this kind of, like, tortured person who is kind of trying to make peace and is actively trying to take steps to kind of reconcile these things, but it's just, like, not good enough at it and not, like,
Mhm.
hard enough about drawing a line, because he does kind of want people to get along, but, like, in the book he's more just like, I'm not gonna deal with it. Whereas,
It'll
like, the
be fine.
Viserys in the show is trying to deal with it. He's just, like, not succeeding at dealing with it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I agree with the comment that the dynamic, I think, I mean, I haven't read the book, but I do think that that dynamic is so strong because it makes you care more about their relationship, and that's part of what makes it so compelling emotionally is the fact that like they were friends and then to see where their relationship ends up.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
me personally, well, like this was something I was like, oh, we're doing this. So like I was totally surprised by it. For me personally in the show, I think that like because well, the show is so tightly packed with plot, they are like zooming through stuff, excuse me, in each episode. I feel like the show would have benefited from having one or two extra episodes to like
Hmm.
to have less of a completely breakneck pace because I feel like we did rush through the transition of Rhaenyra and Alicent going from friends to enemies like much too quickly. And
Mm.
the fact that we'd established them as friends, I was like, oh, that's a new thing. How are you going to deal with that? Because I know where they end up. And unless they're not going to end up that way, in which case, I don't know how you're going to do this show at all. Because it's kind of like the crux of this whole, Dance of the Dragons war that we're doing. So I was like,
Hmm.
okay, they can't stay friends. So what are you going to do? So I just felt like if there had been another episode or two to like
Hmm.
carry us through, or if it had been more that when we would do the time skip between like the young actors and the older actors, and if it had been more implied that we're going to start to go down a path of animosity when they're
Hmm.
young, and then we skip ahead and it's full animosity, it's implied, then maybe that off screen. But it felt so fast, and it felt so like, well, we need to get them into position because they have to be enemies. And I'm like, yeah, but like not so fast.
Yeah, I can see that. I do think it's quick and it would have been nice to see a little bit more of it, but I do think they still did a pretty good job of like giving you moments that offer insight into how and why some of it happened. So,
So I don't know if Ray, if you've read the book. And so I don't know who you mean by bitter old lady because Alicent is not old, like in the book. She's a little bit older than Rhaenyra, but she's still really young to be marrying the king. And so like there's just no foundation of friendship. But actually it's a point of bitterness for Rhaenyra that Alicent remains quite young looking and quite lithe and thin, whereas Rhaenyra like never loses the baby weight and is like not nearly as pretty as she was when she was like a young princess. So like in addition to their general like, the succession being annoying, it's like commented on in Fire and Blood that Rhaenyra kind of also resents that Alicent like remains so like hot and sexy and
oh
Rhaenyra is
God.
like definitely not hot anymore. So yeah. When people
I'm
were
glad
saying and
I,
people were
I'm kind of glad
legitimately
they didn't like make that a thing.
well, but people were saying that Emma Darcy is not hot enough to play Rhaenyra, and I was like, Emma Darcy is way hotter than Rhaenyra is actually supposed to be. So, actually,
Yeah, I'm
yeah,
glad they didn't make that a major plot point because, like, who we don't like really. That's not the thing we need. I feel like that would have made it feel like so much more petty. I don't know.
yeah. Well, but again, like they were never friends, so like this is
Yeah,
just like
it's
the
different.
stepmom that married my dad and is super
Yeah,
young and
that's
super hot and stayed super hot after having
yeah,
kids.
that makes more sense. Whereas with this,
Yeah.
it would have been yes,
Yes, here
exactly. It
if
would
she
be
was
tired.
bitter over Alicent being hot, then because they were friends, like it would be worse. But I think
Yeah,
resenting your hot stepmom is fine.
fair.
Yeah. Especially if you're pretty sure your hot stepmom like seduced her way into marrying the king, your dad.
Hmm.
Like screw you.
Yeah,
Um
I do think they do a good job of making you care about both of them and empathize with both of them to a certain extent. But also both of them do terrible things.
yeah, I think the show definitely well, with both of them by having this friendship thing made both of them more likable characters, softened them both, and made Alicent more sympathetic. Because Alicent, I mean, it
Mhm.
is again written like a history book. So you're like, oh, this young woman kind of like gets friendly with the king and ends up marrying him. And
Right.
Rhaenyra is bitter about it. And obviously the kingdom is like, hey, what? And then we get a civil war because she's like, no, my son is going to inherit. It's like, she's like a pretty and the
Mhm.
implication is because Viserys is kind of a pushover that he just kind of lets Alicent have her way, and she refuses to be friendly with Rhaenyra, refuses to let their kids like. And the implication is also that like we didn't really get this so much in the show, which isn't necessarily a problem, but because there's so much animosity between Alicent and Rhaenyra that Viserys refuses to deal with, the sense is that the kids are just kind of like picking up on their parents' vibe, and so then they fight with each other because their
Mhm.
parents hate each other so much. So like here in the show, it seemed a little bit like the kids just kind of naturally hated each other already, less that they were picking up on the super toxic fighting between their parents. But it's still like cycles of animosity that are kind of like perpetuating and getting
Yeah.
worse.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Were the time skips they were I felt like they were decently disorienting, and I have read the book. How disorienting were they for you?
Um, I did know that there was a time skip at some point. I had
There are
heard people
several.
talking. Well, I knew there was a big one where the actors change.
But I mean, like,
So,
the other actors also kind of, like, keep like, there's, like, 4 actresses that play, what's her name? Um, the Valyrian, girl.
oh, so
Lena. Lena.
Lena.
There's, like, little girl Lena, teenage Lena,
Mhm.
adult Lena, like, and
Yeah.
then Laenor
Well,
gets
but I
2
mean the
actors and
main but I mean, like, the main like, Alicent and Rhaenyra. Like, I knew that there was, like, a point at which those actresses changed
then
because
their
people were
kids
talking
also
about
show
it.
up as children and
Yeah.
then get aged up. So there's, like,
And then
there's
it get aged
constantly,
up.
like, new
There is a
actors.
lot. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I thought it was fine. I mean, I kind of knew to expect a time jump. The thing is, oh, and we should talk about this because I think I told you this right after I watched it. Now I'm remembering and you told me something. So, I thought right before that time jump, I thought Viserys was gonna die. I thought they were trying to, like, make it seem like he was dying, like, that, like, when he collapses at the end of the, like, wedding feast episode or whatever, that he was dead. So I was surprised that we had a time skip and he's old but still alive, which, like, because it gave you the vibe that that's what was supposed to happen. So I think when we talked about it, you said you never thought that because you knew he had to keep living for longer, which is interesting because I didn't know that. So I just was like, "Oh, well, I guess he's dead. Wait, he's not? What?"
I think if memory serves, Viserys, as I already said, he's quite different in the book. He's just like generally got gout, and he's like kind of like he's kind of like a party hardy guy. He likes to drink. He has gout. He likes to eat well. He just kind of likes to live well and doesn't really
Yeah.
want to deal with like the problems. And he's like,
Well, he
get
probably
along, get
I mean,
along.
he might have, like, diabetes or something because he keeps losing, like, fingers and stuff, and, like, when you
No,
have
but I
really
mean,
bad
so
diabetes,
like
that can
I
happen.
was gonna like his like decrepit, sickly, falling apartness is not a thing in the books or in the book. Because in the book, I'm
Oh,
saying like
okay,
he has
okay.
gout, so he is like kind of sickly in terms of like he doesn't take good care of himself and like
Mhm,
he eats a lot, he drinks a lot, he has gout. And so then
mhm.
like he does, when he's dying, it's not like super surprising, but he's not like this like leper that's like completely like falling apart. Like that's so yeah. I was like, okay, he's like a lot sicklier, but I was like, well, but he's got to keep kicking. And then like every episode, you're like, oh my god, how are you still not dead?
It was wild. It was really wild. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, no, but, like, watching it not having any context, I just assumed he was dying at that point. So,
older
yeah.
Leanna being introduced and being so cool and then being killed off. I think she's killed off in the next episode. I don't think it's
Uh,
the same episode because like they show Damon and her like in the South in the name is
mhm.
not coming to me. But anyway, they're like it shows them like pretty happily married. And then I think it's in the next episode that she dies.
Yeah.
But yeah. Yeah. There
She
was
was
also just
cool.
so many actresses playing that character.
It's true.
Yeah, he was
He
dying
was
at every
dying at
point.
every point, it's true.
His mask super reminded me of Kingdom of Heaven, which I love. Yes. Okay, yeah. You probably don't because like while the show was airing, obviously, like all of us were like there was constantly like news about the next episode and behind the scenes and stuff.
Mhm.
So in the episode where Lyanna dies, we never really get to see Daemon grieving with the kids. And there was a scene filmed that we've seen screenshots of where Daemon is like hugging their daughters,
Mm.
like grieving, and they cut the scene. And so yeah, I'm pretty mad they
He
cut it.
seems That's interesting because he comes across as, like, very cold in the
In
show,
general, yeah. And again, they made
but
him
especially
slightly
towards
less
his
cold.
kids.
Yeah. It would have been nice to see that scene. But I guess I don't know why they cut it. It might have literally been for time and they were like, "Well, this is not moving the plot forward. We do not have time for this."
We don't have time for anything. Um, Matt Smith did an incredible job. I was
Yeah. I was so
not
sorry I doubted him.
expecting. Yeah, I wasn't expecting it. And also he's got such like an unusual look to him that like when the show was airing and people were like going on about him and I was like, "Really?" Like I don't and then I watched the show and I was like, "I see it. I get
He's
it.
got
It's the
charisma.
vibe. He's got charisma. I
Yeah. I
understand."
mean, when I first heard that he was cast, just when it was like announced, like the casting decision, I was like, because
Mhm,
he's again like Damon is kind of like a violent, thicker a build, like kind of like alpha male type. And I was like, I really like Matt Smith as an actor, and he can certainly be
mhm,
like confident, and he can be charismatic, and he can be what all these things. But I was like, I don't think of him as like, big alpha man. And so I was like, I don't know about that. And then I saw trailers, when the show was released, the teasers or whatever, and I actually
mhm,
saw him in Damon gear, and so I was like, okay, well, he certainly looks more the part than I would have expected. And then I saw him
mhm.
playing the role, and I was like, okay, I'm so sorry, guys. Perfect Damon.
And it was yeah, it that's the thing is, like, he was, like, such a horrible person, but also, like,
Not the worst person somehow.
not the worst person somehow, and also just, like, so engaging. I'm like, like you more than I should."
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, he's kind of like how people like Moriarty, even though he's evil, and they like Loki,
Yeah.
even though he's evil. He's definitely
Yeah.
worse than Loki, but like
Yeah. It's the same vibe, though, it's the same reason I think you like Loki is
Matt
yeah.
Smith's the one reason you think you might want to watch it.
It's not a bad
I
reason,
mean, the
yeah.
entire cast though, like,
The
is
cast is
fantastic.
amazing. They yeah, the performances were really incredible. And I also think that the switch for the actresses who played Rhaenyra and Allison were good. Like I liked younger and older, and I think it felt pretty believable to me, the transition.
And even though I think, well,
So
I personally feel this way, maybe you don't, but I feel like the show kind of more so steers you towards rooting for Rhaenyra and the Targaryens, or like the true Targaryens.
yeah.
But I think it does a decently equal job of not making it like clearly Rhaenyra's in the right and clearly Alicent's in the wrong. Like it's very very messy. So I don't think that they overdid it on like obviously Daemon Rhaenyra we stand we love Alicent screw
Mhm.
her like they made Alicent much more sympathetic. They made
Yeah.
Rhaenyra and Daemon. I mean, actually, they made Rhaenyra and Daemon more sympathetic than they are in the book as well. But still, like they did it pretty evenly, I think.
They did, although I will say, no way in hell do I think Aegon would ever make a good king. So I'm like, "Really? Him? And really you're covering up him assaulting a servant girl? Oh, this is good." Yeah.
I mean,
Um,
it's definitely I mean, I don't know how much you remember of, again, Game of Thrones, but it's like the prototype of Cersei and Joffrey, where like Cersei like
mm,
must know that Joffrey's a monster, but is like, nope, my baby boy shall be king. And you're like, okay. So
ugh,
the addition of this prophecy, right? It
mhm,
adds a layer because like in the book without the prophecy, it's literally Allison being like, I don't care, my son is gonna be king, as opposed to this like more like introspective like thing where she has reason to believe that maybe Viserys somehow really did want this. And like if you're being honest, like he had the chance to like name him heir, and you know what a piece of shit your son is, and like do you really think Viserys wanted that? Unlikely. But like he does murmur this thing for Alicent to hear, and in a state of like grief and vulnerability and like bias for her to be like, this is what he wanted. Like, I'm sure this is what he wanted. Whereas again, in the book,
it's
she's just like,
it's
my
like
son is
an
gonna be king.
well, with this, it's like, I'm like, I feel like deep down you know that that's not true, but you're lying to yourself because you want it to be true, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which again,
Although
if
I
they
will
didn't just
say
have
I
like
like
if every man in Westeros wasn't named Aegon, it might help.
oh my god. I you know who I do like though is even though he's another person who I don't think I should, but I kind of like the what's his name? The brother with the who loses the eye,
Aemond.
Aemond. Like I could see him being a good king.
Better than I mean, well, there's that great scene,
Certainly better than
which,
Aegon.
as far as I remember, is not in the book because again, there aren't really
Mhm.
scenes in the book where Aegon is like, "Let me go, I'll leave, and you can be king," and he's like, "I'm not into that idea."
I know. I also was like, Not a terrible
Which
idea.
also, that actor's performance in the last episode when he and Lucerys get into it on their dragons, and then he
Oof.
loses control of his dragon, and the dragon kills Lucerys, like, the look on his face of, like, like like, he meant to scare him, he meant to hurt him, he
Right.
knows that he has started the civil war right
Yeah.
now. Like, the
Yeah.
face he makes is just, like, perfect.
Man. Yeah, no, he did an excellent job.
So you won't know that
Mhm.
there were genuinely people theorizing as the show was airing that Aemond is actually Daemon's son, that Alicent and Daemon had an affair, and that that's his son. And I was like, "Are you serious? Alicent? Daemon?
No way.
Never."
No. There's no way in hell. Allison, who's, like, got so much pent up, like, sexual frustration that she takes it out on her s like, what, her stepdaughter? Oh my god.
And they were like, "Well, they were
Like,
like, 'You're so similar.'" And
she
I'm like,
can't
"Yes, there's, like, paralleling going on, but that's not his
oh,
son."
no, it's not his son.
Like, Daemon would
I mean,
literally
if
never.
there was gonna be anything, I feel like there is a lot of, like, unresolved tension between Alicent and Sir
Oh
Kristen?
my god, yeah. She obviously is super into him.
Obviously super into him. Well, 'cause did
Also,
isn't
that
he the
guy,
guy she had a crush on him when she was a
he
kid?
they really could have given that actor some gray hairs because, like, he looks exactly the same throughout this entire show while everyone
True,
else keeps getting new actors, and you're like,
true.
"Are you a vampire, sir?"
Maybe he is. Maybe that's what's
Exactly
going on.
the
Yeah. No, but he was the guy that she had a crush on as a kid before she started getting pushed at Viserys. Like, clearly there's some, like, pent up stuff, and I think jealousy also because he was the person that,
same.
even though it was, like,
Which
once that
I also
Rhaenyra was
thought it was
with.
interesting how they handled that because, again, it's, written like a history book. So, in terms
Mhm,
of who is allied with who and why that is, in the book, we know that Sir Criston was, like, Rhaenyra's guard, and that eventually his loyalties go over to Alicent. And so in the book, it's like there's like several different theories as to why this occurred. So like that's how the historian presents it. It's like some people
mhm,
say this thing happened and that's what caused this. Other people say this
mhm.
thing happened and that's what caused this. And yet other people say this thing happened and that's what caused it. And the show kind of like took a little bit of each of those theories and put all of them in.
That's interesting.
Cuz like in a history book you can say that, but in a show you have to pick a narrative, you know.
Yeah. I think the thing is, like, the scene well, it was interesting, right? Because it's like we're following on the steps of this, like, deeply uncomfortable scene with her uncle seducing her, sort of, well, seducing her. That was, like, super yikes. But then it's like she goes and is with Sir Kristen. Is it Kristen? Okay. Um, and, like, even though it's coming on the heels of that, it also kind of felt like, "Okay, cool. You're, like, taking control of your own choices and sexuality," and, like, I think but it's messy because of the dynamic. I don't know. It was that was such an
Well, like,
interesting.
what I found really interesting was in the way they shot the scene where she is, like, sleeping for the first time with Sir Christian Cole, is, like,
Uh-huh.
they didn't rush the scene, they didn't just cut to them having sex. They show
Mhm,
all the times that Sir Kristen could have said no and didn't, and almost said no and didn't, and they really go through the entire scene and show her wanting it and him being like, "We shouldn't," but then he keeps going and then like taking off of the white cloak which is the symbol of his vow and he's the one that like
mhm,
puts it down and they zoom in on his like hand putting it down and they go through this like long scene to kind of show how both of them mostly him are kind of the point of no return and like choosing
mhm.
to do this thing
Yeah.
which I thought was like very intentional.
No, I agree with that, but after the fact, she owns her choices and he doesn't.
Well, he's like, well, this
Well,
means that we're going to be together forever, run away with me, and she's like, sir,
mhm,
your D was not that good.
listen,
I'm the
he
literal princess, are you for serious right now?
it's like giving me flashbacks to things in, like, evangelical churches that happened.
He is so butthurt.
There
Oh
are
my
people
god.
like that. Oh gosh. Yeah.
It's like, really, dude? What did you think was gonna happen?
Oof. Man.
And he is not
Yeah,
over it, how 10 years or whatever later, like, he
no,
wasn't
not even
bitter.
remotely, but, like, I keep wondering if in the next season him and Alicent are gonna actually strike up something, but I don't know. And then there's that creepy guy that seems to also be really into Alicent, like, oh
Hilarious,
my god.
who is the brother of the guy who is the father of Rhaenyra's children, her
Yes,
first
and he, like,
children.
kills his brother.
Mhm.
He's so creepy. There's that scene where he's, like, watching her oh my ooh,
Which
just
again, that's not in the
remembering.
book because the book
Of
doesn't
course it's
have
not.
scenes like that. So
Oh
when that
my
was
god.
happening, I was like, "I'm sorry, what's happening right now? Why is this happening right
I
now?"
was like, "Why? Why?"
So we cut
Oh
the
my
scene where
god.
Daemon hugs his daughters, and we keep the scene where Larys stares at Alison's feet. Okay, cool.
And it's like, you know, doing something.
Littlefinger, I think you mean Littlefoot. Oh wait, no, that's a little dinosaur. Can't be Littlefoot. Um,
Ugh. He does a good job playing a total creep, though. I'm like,
but it's again like so. I feel like there's a lot of coping though with like Damon also being evil and people being like, no, but it's actually fine because we like Damon. And it's like, it's not fine. Because I remember,
it's
not
not
everyone,
fine.
of course, but I remember there being a lot of people really upset when I think it's either in the second to last or the last episode where Damon chokes Rhaenyra, and people were like, "Oh, that's a bridge too far," and I'm like, he murdered his first wife, right? Like, how is this not a thing Damon would do? I don't understand how people are like, Damon, not my Damon. It's like, yes, Damon would absolutely choke Rhaenyra.
Yeah, I mean, it is like it is a disturbing scene, but, it's a
Yes,
disturbing
I
scene
know.
for sure, but I don't know but I don't know how it's out of character. It's not.
That's what I'm so like this is kind of the thing that I have with fandoms in general because like I think the Darkling in the Grisha books is really well written and interesting to read about. I do not ship the main character with the Darkling because he is the villain and he is evil. So like I don't understand why people can't like a character and also accept the fact that they are not like redeemable. Like you don't have to like because you like the character be like and it's actually fine what they're doing because otherwise if it wasn't fine I couldn't like them. Like you could enjoy this character and find them interesting and
Mhm.
not approve of what they are doing.
No, I think it's because people don't just like them, they find them attractive, and I
Which
also think
again,
right, right, right,
which is
but
fine.
I think people probably just have, like, complicated feelings about that where, like, th they don't want to admit that they're, like, attracted to somebody evil maybe, like, or that, like, well, maybe they're not as bad as they seem, which is also why there are so many popular romances that are, like, you know, he he kills people, but not me.
I mean, Damon is not a bad boy with a heart of gold.
No,
He's just a
he's
bad
not.
boy.
He's yeah, yeah. And he's also not somebody who has a morality chain where, like, the one woman he loves, he'll be good for, like, he's not that either.
No.
So,
Like, it's clear
yeah,
he's kind of always had a thing for Rhaenyra, but, like, that isn't
which
all
is
that
creepy.
romantic.
No.
Like, considering the Targaryen tradition of incest, like, it's slightly less creepy because it's like, this
At
is
least
on the
he's not her
table as an
brother.
option. Yeah, but I mean, so, like, it's slightly only slightly less creepy when it's like, well, it's established in our family that we do marry, like, uncle to niece, cousins together, brothers, sisters, like, this is a thing we do. So for Daemon to be like, "Well, I might get married to her because like, this is a thing that's very much a thing that might happen." So, like, yeah, I'm into her, I would.
Yeah,
Um
except that he starts kind of grooming her when she's an
Oh,
adolescent, which is
absolutely. I just said it's
not
slightly less creepy because
still
it's like
creepy.
an
But yeah,
actual, like, societally acceptable option instead of, like, straight up.
yeah, yeah. Um, no, I think it's a fantastic show. It's
Yeah. Is my
it
did my mic switch?
yes.
Okay, I don't know why it's
I
doing
don't know.
this before.
I do I do like the way that it has women who are strong and interesting and very imperfect trying to cope with this very messy world they live in. Um, I just think there's so much nuance to the way that they handle misogyny and, like, these women at the center of this. Like, I don't know, I think it did a really good job in how it handled things.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different things I think it handled. Also, is my mic back to being right?
Yes.
Okay. I mean, like the way that Rhaenyra and Laenor have a conversation when they're betrothed, and she's like, "Look, I know, and you know, and it's fine, but we just have to make
Mhm.
heirs for the kingdom. So like, I don't know, you do whatever, I don't care,"
Yeah.
because it's just like practical. And this is why like this is why these are the kinds of books and stories that I am clearly like suited for, because whenever I read books where there's like a political marriage that is like needs to take place, and it's even discussed that like, you know, like the prince or the king or whatever is like, look, you just need to marry me to make this alliance. I know your true love is like John Doe over here, and you know what, I don't even mind if you like want to have an affair with him while we're married. We need to have this marriage for a political alliance. And they're like, I could never, I'm going to marry my true love. And I'm always like, that's so stupid. Oh my god, can you just be practical for like 2 seconds? Like it doesn't even fucking matter. um, so like it's always like these very like lovey stories where they're like, no, we shouldn't do this marriage that's not for love. We deserve better than that. I was like, but you can have both. You can like secure the kingdom and the finances and the wars and the whatever the reason was that you needed to get married, and
Mhm.
have your true love. You can have your cake and eat it too. Why would you say no to that? That's so stupid.
Well, because they can't do it publicly, and that's hard. I mean, and I think
Whatever.
well, but I think you see that, right? Like, I think you see that with, especially with having kids with somebody that you're not supposed to be, like, you see how hard that is
Yeah, well, in
on
that, I mean, I think the
that
plan
family
was to
unit.
have Laenor try to give her some kids.
And that did not go well.
But yeah, which is again,
Yeah.
in the book, like the Valerians all look like the Targaryens more or less. So like it's like rumored that Rhaenyra's kids do look a little bit more like the what's his name? Uh Harwin? Anyway, like her
Something.
boyfriend.
Mhm.
And not like her husband's kids, but it's not this like blatant he's black and her kids are white. Like they're just like they're all white people. And but people are like, we think her kids don't look like him. And so it's more like everyone's gossiping about it, but it's not like obviously.
I mean, yeah, in this case, it's like, it's pretty obvious. They don't
Yeah.
look like her or her husband, so
Yeah. Which
yeah.
I think was an interesting choice for like the casting when they were
Mhm,
like because they knew that this would be a part of the story is this like illegitimacy.
mhm.
So like to make it so very like visually obvious as opposed to like something rumored and speculated about. Kind of like with the fire as well. It's another thing in the book that's like speculated, but
Mhm.
here is confirmed. In the book, it's speculated by people like who would have had a reason to kill it's Harwin, isn't it? It sounds wrong. It's Strong. There's Larry Strong, the creep, and his brother. It's Harwin, isn't it?
I don't
I
know,
don't
I
know.
could see. Um,
But anyway, so it's speculated like who would have a something to gain by killing him. And one
mhm.
of the theories even is that Daemon and or Rhaenyra would have done it so that they could be together. Or that Daemon would do it so that he could have Rhaenyra. Um so like it's not
Interesting.
confirmed. Okay, it
Harwin.
is Harwin.
Harwin, yeah.
So like obviously in the show they confirmed that it is Larys that did it, but in the book it's not confirmed.
Interesting. Uh, yeah, I mean, I think the casting choice for a visual medium makes sense, especially because they're so tight on time, is they need a way to make it really obvious that this is a concern.
Oh, the illegitimacy.
The illegitimacy. Mhm.
Yeah.
It's like they don't even like you kinda figure it out pretty quickly, like, "Oh,
Well,
okay,
I guess
I
it
see what's
depends on
happening."
how you want the kind of like the tone of the conflict to seem. Do you want it to seem like this is obviously a conflict for obvious reasons that it may or may not be legitimate reasons, or it's just like everybody finding excuses to rumor monger and it's not even legit? Because it kind of comes off that way in
Yeah.
the book, where they're like everyone's gossiping about everybody, and is this true? We're not sure, but
Mhm.
they certainly uses it as a pretext. So like, do you want it to be a bunch of people politicking and just like coming up with things that aren't verifiable but are like using it as a pretext, or do you want it to be like blatantly obvious that these are like quote unquote legitimate grievances?
Yeah. Well, I think the fact that it was more obvious is also helps for the fact that they used it as a conflict item between the kids as well.
Viserys sticking to his grandchildren being legit, even though they're
That's
Caucasian
true.
brunettes made for good scene.
It's true.
Yeah, and of course the iconic "he can keep his tongue" scene where I that bothered me because I was like, okay, even though Daemon is a prince, you don't just get to like kill people. Like that was a murder, which was also my big problem with like Kristen Cole murdering what's his name in the wedding, which is not a thing. I was like, you wouldn't just get to be like, oh, Pat, like get to be King's Guard after that. Like you're a danger. Like you just killed like the prince consort's
Yeah,
boyfriend. Like you don't just
right.
get, and he's like a noble. You don't just get to do that.
But we get such a big time skip right there that you who knows how they resolved that.
I don't understand why he wasn't like arrested on site. Like I was like, that's so this is TV drama. I was like, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, that's fair. It was a
Yeah.
lot.
He's not just the
Yeah.
prince, he's the rogue prince. I was like, I was like, if Sir Kristen can just murder people, well then I guess I accept that Daemon can. But I don't really accept that either of them can. That's not how this works. Especially because like the king had just pronounced sentence. He said he will have his tongue for that. That is the
Right.
determination of the king. And Daemon is like, nah, I'm gonna behead him. It's like, that's, treason. The king just
Mhm.
said what he wanted. That's not what he said he wanted. And it wasn't a mistake. Whoopsie.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, he does seem unhinged.
Yeah.
Yeah, when he's training the kids too, when Kristen Cole is training Rhaenyra's kids, I was like, how are you letting this happen right now? I do not understand.
Yeah, that was a lot. I Yeah, because you wouldn't think that that would be allowed.
Well, not just not allowed. I mean, you'd think Rhaenyra would be like, I'm not allowing this.
Oh, yeah, that too, for sure. Yeah, there were definitely a few things that were like that,
This
and
is
there
for
were
TV
also
drama.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I think there were other things too where scenes felt like they were a little over the top in to a point that seemed
Rhaenyra
like it was
coming
more
up out of
just
the floor on her dragon.
That was great though.
It was
Yeah,
again a bit much,
it
but
was, but it was fun. I liked her.
yeah. Well, I think the reason this scene also bothers me a ton, not just because I find it unrealistic that this is being permitted to occur,
Mhm.
but I also it's this like, okay, it's one thing, Kristen, to despise Rhaenyra, but these are innocent kids, It's like
Yeah.
that really makes you a monster.
Yeah. But I mean, there are people like that who, because they're angry at the kids because of who their parents are. It's
Yeah.
not unheard of.
It just is
So,
much, 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 much worse. I think that's what makes people go, Damon would never do that.
Sean makes a good point.
I completely disagree. Because as I said, the king had said, I will have his tongue for that. And he did
Mhm.
not say anything else was to be done. It's up to the king to decide. And the king has not said he is to be killed. The Valyrians are cousins to the royal family. They are also like borderline royalty.
Mhm.
Um, you don't just get to behead them because they upset you. That's not a thing that you can do. Yeah, thanking Laenor's death, I think, was done to make Rhaenyra and Daemon more likable instead of just killing Laenor.
I I I was pleasantly surprised by it.
I was just very confused. I was like, "Wait, what?"
But then I kept thinking like, is he gonna show up in another season? Like that would throw a wrench
But,
in the
like,
works.
no, because he's definitely, like, dead in the book, so
Okay, well,
the fact that he's alive at all is just kind of like a kindness.
yeah, that's so cold to like, oh man.
For me, I was like, "Okay, so this is the change you decided to make, that instead of killing him, they're like, we're gonna get him to, like, leave and fake his death, I was like, I need to know what the conversation was when you convinced him to go with this plan. Like, I'm not picturing it for you being like, hey, would you like to go off and live in exile, never see your family again, never see your dragon again, never live in wealth and luxury again? Just go live a hermit's life with your boyfriend, yes, so that we can get married. Wonderful. Like, I don't really see Laenor being like, sounds good.
I don't know.
Now that my parents have just lost my sister, now they're gonna believe me to be brutally killed as well. Yup, great plan.
I don't know. Maybe they took some like money with them so they have a good life. I could see
That's
him
a
being
lot to
willing to
give
run
up.
off.
Though.
I don't
I'm just
know.
saying, like, I need to see the scene where we learn why Laenor was willing to go with
he was
this.
so miserable.
I mean, it's one thing to be miserable while living in the lap of luxury with your family and your dragon and your status and your wealth, and the reality of saying goodbye to all of that forever and also traumatizing your parents. Like, it's a big ask. It's also a huge liability if he changes his mind, which is why I don't think Daemon would be down with it. He'd be like, sure, Rhaenyra, he can run away, wink, and then he kills him. Like, that's so much more realistic to me that Rhaenyra would think he's leaving and Daemon's like, totes.
That I think is fair. I could see him agreeing to it, honestly. Besides, they probably threatened him.
I mean, but what could they threaten?
That they'd kill him if he didn't leave. Like, here are your options. Run off
I mean, he's
with
not
your
again, he's not without resources. His father, like,
yeah,
is in charge of the entire fleet. He can just be like, yo, dad.
I guess
They're
so.
gonna be super fucked if they don't have the Valyrians on their side.
I guess. I don't know. He just seemed really unhappy and he does seem a little selfish.
Again, it's for that reason that I don't think he'd be willing to give up everything that he has to go live
Maybe.
the life of a nobody. Basically, do what Rhaenyra was not willing to do to run off with Kristen Cole.
Yeah.
It seemed like a little bit, again, more like for TV, where I was like,
Mhm.
thinking through the reality, because like also again, he'll never see his dragon again. Like, that's a big thing.
Yeah.
Which also people have pointed out, because the dragons do have kind of connections with their riders, that like his dragon would go and find him and out him as being alive.
That could be true. I think the more believable thing to me though is that Damon would go after him and kill him anyway or have somebody do it.
Or yeah, just kill him straight up, and then he tells Rhaenyra, "No, it's a cleverly
Yeah.
orchestrated fake death, but it's just literally his dead body." He's like, "I found a corpse that looks so much like him. Don't worry, my darling. It's
Yeah,
not
because
really him."
I don't think he wants any like loose strings.
And we know that Daemon doesn't really care about killing people.
No, he does not.
So yeah, that I found unbelievable.
Mm.
But I did like Laenor, and I liked the casting.
Mhm. Me too. Yeah.
And the dragons. We haven't talked about the dragons.
The dragons were very cool.
And they were never on screen just for cool factor. Like, they were always
Mhm.
plot significant. It was never like, oh, this scene is here just because look what we can do. Here's a cool. I mean, I wouldn't even be mad about it if they did that, because they are really cool. But like,
Yeah.
they're always narratively significant, what they mean to the people, to the politics, to the story.
They also feel dangerous in a way that I think dragons in shows often don't. Like
Well, not just
the
dangerous, but
fact
they feel really real and grounded. Like the reality of
Yes.
like this cumbersome beast, and how the harness would actually have to work to climb up on them, and like
Mhm.
how like Viserys has this line about like people think that the Targaryens control dragons, but that's like a lie. Like, you can't control dragons. They just feel very much like, as much as like you can realistically portray something that doesn't exist, like they feel
Mhm.
so grounded in reality, like this massive, massive thing that's like when they land, it feels heavy, and when they like take off, like it's not like like immediate and quick, like it
Yeah.
feels huge.
Yeah. No, I think it's really impressive the way that they did it, and it feels like I feel nervous for these kids climbing up on these dragons to fly. Mhm.
I mean, also all just like look at all these comments about the dragons, like
I
the
love it.
names of the dragons are really
Mhm.
awesome names, because they're all like
Yeah.
Valyrian names.
Mhm.
Also, that I love that they had a lot of scenes where they were speaking in Old Valyrian. Like
Yeah,
Rhaenyra
that
would
was
talk to
cool.
Daemon in Valyrian a lot.
I thought that was very cool.
It added a certain je ne sais quoi.
Mhm. Yeah, it felt very a lot of things just felt very realistic.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, I mean, that's why people liked Game of Thrones to begin with, because it was like Lord of the Rings, but what if it was like realistic? Like people are kind of the worst and selfish and politicking and like backstabbing, and the heroes don't
Yeah,
always win. And they're like, oh wow.
yeah. That's not what I want from Lord of the Rings, though, so I'm glad it's not
No, but
that.
like when fantasy
But
like
yeah.
seemed like it had always been where like, oh, the good guy wins because he's the
Right,
good guy and he has the magic
right.
sword. And then here comes George R. R. Martin is like, oh, the good guy dies in the first book. And you're like, I don't know where we go from here.
Like, what? What
What?
is happening? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I mean, that's like why Joe Abercrombie wrote First Law, because he kind of thought fantasy had to be Lord of the Rings. And then he
Mhm,
read A Song of Ice and Fire and was like, you're telling me that it doesn't
mhm.
have to be like that. Well, hold my
Leanna,
beer.
did we make it 55 minutes without a Joe Abercrombie
I think I
reference?
deserve a prize for that or
I think
something.
you do. It's pretty impressive. Oh, man.
Uh,
Yeah.
the popping out scene?
I think they're talking about the dragon coming out of the ground.
I wouldn't call that popping. Because there
Yeah.
was a few times that like that was one of the most unrealistic things then, because as real as the dragons feel, there are these times when they sneak up on people and you're like, how did you miss this giant dragon?
It's true. It would be hard to do that.
But I love like the how many times the show like intentionally draws parallels between either characters or events or both. Like the two times that like they meet on that bridge outside of Dragonstone, and with like
Mhm,
Rhaenyra and standing between Daemon and Otto Hightower when she's a young girl, and then her again doing the same, post coup, when
mhm.
she's like claimed the crown.
People are talking about, like, the rainy scene being, controversial. I am okay with an unrealistic thing for cool factor.
Yeah. Well, so my problem with the scene was that like I did agree that that was like a bit slightly weaker writing, and it
Mhm,
felt more like just like a TV moment for the sake of spectacle. So I
mhm,
agree that it wasn't like great writing, but when people reacted to it really really strongly and were saying that like she would have started a revolt because she killed all these peasants. Like she's evil for killing peasants by coming through the floor. And that why didn't she immediately kill? It doesn't make any sense that she wouldn't immediately kill Aegon with the dragon's fire. And why would she just leave without killing them? And I was like, okay, all of that is actually good writing because one, what we're shown all the time is that these royals don't care about the little people and they don't care that they're about to plunge them into tons of death over their squabbles and their wars. The little people suffer for all of this because they do not care. They are not people to them. And two, yeah, killing all they're like, why would she spare Aegon and kill all those peasants? Because again, peasants are not people. Killing Aegon, who is the prospective heir to the throne, that's a civil war starting act. And Rhaenys is
mhm.
like, this is not my fight. I'm just out of here. So like,
She's like, I'm not about to be the one that starts
she's like,
this."
I will go
Yeah,
tell Rhaenyra what you just did, and she can decide. But yeah, I'm not going to start the civil war for her.
right, which I think is fair.
Oh yeah, and then that's what people also said is that like when she came up through the floor that she should have died from like the stones falling as well, which like I mean maybe, but
Maybe, it
I feel
depends.
like the dragons are pretty good at protecting their riders.
I don't know. I also just am not bothered by doing something for spectacle from time to time. It's fine.
Yeah, this too. So like her killing Aegon would have been regicide and kinslaying and starting a
Mhm.
civil war. Like that's
Yeah,
a big
that's a
deal.
big
So
deal,
that's why
yeah.
she was not going to do that. And then Damon gets mad at her. That's exactly what she says in the next episode. She's like, I wasn't going to do that. Hashtag not my problem. I was supposed to be queen and wasn't. If you want to be queen, you fight about it.
Man, she's great. I really like her, and I think her relationship with Corlys is so interesting, and I love the way they handle their dynamic as people who've been together for a
Well,
long time. It's
and
just it's
I
good.
think given the situation, I think they did a good job of showing us how it wasn't completely unbelievable that Rhaenyra would get Corlys and Rhaenys on their side, even though Corlys and Rhaenys think that Rhaenyra maybe possibly killed Laenor. They still side with Rhaenyra in this conflict against Alicent. you know, like where she like looks at Rhaenyra and is like, I do think she should be queen, and I do think that we should fight for that. Like, I think they did a good job of like not having her on Rhaenyra's side immediately, that there's a lot of animosity and she doesn't really trust her because of the whole like Laenor elephant in the room. But she does come around to it where like, you know, the whole enemy of my enemy thing.
Yeah.
And again, like the very practical concerns of like, just because you like a person or love a person doesn't mean that like politically speaking, they should be in charge. So if she's like, who should be in charge, like who should be in charge of the realm, Aegon or Rhaenyra? Okay, Rhaenyra might have killed my son, but it should be Rhaenyra.
But it should be Rhaenyra. Aegon is a mess. Although he was into having that crowd chanting for him.
Yeah. Yeah, the way that, because we have that him telling his brother, you know, you be king, I don't want to be king, I'm not into this, and he doesn't even think as anyone believes in him, he doesn't think his mother loves him, like he has so much doubt going into it.
Yeah.
Which I think was really well done. The actor did a really good job of being like, no, like I just like want to drink and fuck and not be king, and I shouldn't be king. And then as soon as he gets up there and sees people chanting for him, he's like, hell yeah.
Like, I'm your king. Okay. I like this.
Power corrupts absolutely. That's one of the great lines, not absolute power, that's not from this. But when they're trying to convince Viserys that like Daemon might try to kill him to get the throne if he remains his heir, that's why he needs to name a different heir when his wife and child die. And Viserys is like, you know, Daemon is my heir. And they're like, Daemon can't be your heir. Come on now. And they're like, are you suggesting that my brother would like kill me for the throne? Like he has no ambition for the throne. And that like, what is the word that he uses? It's like, he says that like Daemon doesn't have the patience for rule or something, and Otto Hightower is like the gods have yet to make a man that wasn't patient enough for absolute power. It's like, please.
Yeah, I really didn't like
Otto. That too. Alicent also doesn't say that she loves her son. She's just like, you idiot. But she doesn't actually say I love you. You're like, ooh, that's telling. Yeah.
I mean, he is something.
He's not as bad as Joffrey, though. Did you know that the young version of Aegon, the one that's jerking off outside of a window, that's David Tennant's son? The actor.
Oh, really?
Ty Tennant.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That was so... Yeah, I had a lot of negative feelings about Otto pushing his daughter into this whole situation.
And that's hardly the only questionable thing he did.
Well, that's true.
Which, like, again, this is kind of where, like, you can't really root for Otto or Daemon, but, like, Daemon is out here actually killing people. Otto's not doing that. So you're like, maybe I should root for Otto. But it's kind of like with First Law, where people always hate Giselle the most, even though he's actually not hurt anybody. He's just a twat. Yeah. So like between Daemon and Otto, Daemon's out here like mutilating and killing people. But when Daemon is like calling Otto a weasel and a cunt, you're like, yeah, he is. Even though Otto hasn't hurt anybody, he's just kind of like, oh, our family could get more power if we blah, blah, blah. And you're like, fuck that guy. Even though he's actually kind of harmless compared to Daemon.
Yeah, I guess comparatively, except like manipulating his teenage daughter into...
But again, is that worse than Daemon? Who murdered his wife and groomed his niece?
Like, True.
I mean, political marriages and marriages for power is like a normal thing for like high families to do. So for Otto being like, hey, aim high, go for the king, go for the big one, is like, you know, reasonable.
Yeah.
I mean, if not Alicent, he was going to marry like a 10-year-old girl for politics. So like,
true story. No good options.
Oh yeah, where Viserys low-key accused Otto of murdering Balon. Yeah. It was kind of, anytime Otto kind of got you know, it handed to him.
Yes, asking her to put on her mother's dress. Ick. Yes, it was an ick. It was a big ick.
Especially because we had just learned that Mother is dead and then he's grieving her and like
it was so
yeah. Yes, father. Which, like, at the same time, like, when it comes to, like, who she's being sent to, Viserys is also, like, really kind and, like, is really sincere about, like, liking Alicent, and so it's like, you can't really, like, hate him, but, like, he's old, she doesn't wanna marry him, but he's, like he's very kind and loving.
Well, except then there's also that scene where, like, they have sex, and
But again,
she's
even that, like,
clearly, like, not.
it's expected that, like, she's putting out for him, and I don't think there's ever a scene where she's enjoying it, and the idea is like, well,
No.
he's this, like, old king, and he has the whole thing, though, the reason he needs a second marriage is to have heirs, so that's what she is there for.
Yeah, it's just hard to watch.
He wants to talk to her about his trains. Exactly.
It's true.
I loved all the memes that were every time the council is talking about, like, how the crown is in debt and they don't have money, and they're like, "Where did all the money go?" And it just, like, shows his growing miniature city of Valyria. Like, that's where the whole budget went.
Uh,
Um, but yeah, I think
okay.
I love that George R. R. Martin was like Patty Considine is like a because also it wasn't just the writers of the show. Patty Considine himself was like, this is how the direction I see for this character. Like
Mhm.
he's the one that kind of like determined this kind of like tragic figure that Viserys would be. So I just love that George R. R. Martin like called that out and gave him credit and wasn't just like privately pleased about it, but was like, yeah, I told him like this is brilliant. You're better than my original Viserys. You're kind of like Shakespearean. Like this is like King Lear almost, like this is great. But you outdid me. So I'm just so pleased that he got kind of credit for that.
Mm, yeah.
So
Oh,
I any since you haven't read the book, did you have any predictions for where the story will go other than Laenor coming back because he will not?
okay. I thank you for clearing that up for me. Um, I don't know. I'm curious what's gonna happen because it definitely ends. Yeah. I'm like, okay, there's gonna be a civil war. Here we go. So I mean, I I don't know what's gonna happen. I kind of think that maybe.
This also, like, if Laenor is smart, he won't come back. It's about to be
Yeah,
a shit show.
yeah. Okay, I kind of think that Aegon will end up dying somehow, maybe from his own stupidity, but dying, and then his brother, what's Aemond or something?
It's Daemon,
Aemond.
but we move the D to the end.
Oh my god. Okay.
That's why it's his son.
Aemond. Okay.
It's definitely his
Of course,
son.
obviously. Can't you tell? No. Um, and that like Aemond will end up becoming the competing person at some point. And then it'll make it more like unclear who really should be the ruler. But there will be this battle going on with like Rhaenyra. And then I don't know.
Fair enough.
A lot of people are
And
gonna
lots of
die.
death, yeah.
And
Lots of
lots of
dragons and
death,
lots of
lots of
death.
dragons, lots of
Well, this period of
backstabbing.
Targaryen history is known as the Dance of the Dragons. This civil war.
Oh, people are gonna get married off. Maybe there'll be some, like, canoodling with people that are not their betrothed spouses that they're
That
supposed
might
to
be
be
their
with.
siblings.
You know?
But too, so people like pointing out how when Game of Thrones first came out, everyone was like so like shocked by the incest of Jamie and Cersei, and now in
Mhm.
House of the Dragon, people don't bat an
People
eye.
are people are like, "That tracks."
But it's also, I feel like the difference is like somebody who's familiar with the world and the story is like well aware that the Targaryens are famous for like being really incestuous. Like it's a thing that the Targaryens are known to have done constantly. And it's
Mhm.
like partially canonically the reason that probably the Mad King was the Mad King. Cause like you can't keep doing this forever and not have like some um
Yeah.
but
Oh,
like
this is true. Aegon, I think, is betrothed to his sister, right?
yeah.
I don't think they're
But we
married yet.
also saw that Aemond and his sister are a lot more into each other than Aegon, you know?
I feel bad for her, like, she's.
But yeah, he's married to her. They already have kids, I think.
Really?
Don't they? Maybe they don't have kids, but I'm pretty sure they're married.
Oh, I thought they were just like betrothed. But
Because
maybe
like
they're
Alicent
married.
is mad that he's cheating on his wife, aka his sister.
Oh,
Yeah, that's what
I
I thought.
didn't. Oh, okay. Oh, wow. I didn't realize. Dang.
And we know, and then that's when people were speculating that maybe their kids are actually Aemon's kids, because we know that Aemon has a thing for her, and Aegon couldn't care less. Which I don't think, again, is neither here nor there. But people like to. Everyone's well, the problem is that throughout A Song of Ice and Fire, everyone's constant fan theories about everything is that everyone's a secret Targaryen. So in a show with everyone being Targaryens, now the Targaryens have to be secret other things. But yeah, so like anyone who's familiar with the world and the lore is like Targaryens be fucking each other. Like this is a thing we know, no one is surprised. But if anyone's like you who's coming into House of the Dragon is not familiar with the Targaryens, they're gonna be like, I'm sorry, why is there so much incest in this show? Like, what is that about? Like,
it is a lot. I mean, I knew enough to know. I mean, that was one of the things that creeped me out about the books I did read was Cersei and Jaime. I was like, what now?
Well, see, but I think maybe that goes, it's kind of the thing with Daemon and Rhaenyra, right? Where it's like, well, we accept that incest is a thing. They've like established that this is a thing that they do. So you're like, well, he's older than her, which is what makes it creepy, but it's accepted that incest happens. Whereas Jaime and Cersei, it is not accepted that they would be doing this. So like they are going outside of like the cultural, mores and taboos. So much incest and not addressed at all. The only time it's addressed is when Alicent says something about how you Targaryens have strange customs, and then like, it's like,
I mean,
but
it is the case though that like historically a lot of royalty did marry cousins, which is
I mean, it's in because Fire and Blood isn't just this like the portion of the Fire and Blood that House of the Dragon is about is like a substantial but relative, or like it's only a fraction of the story. Fire and Blood begins with the conquering, i.e., when Targaryens showed up in Westeros, conquered Westeros, and became rulers of Westeros. And when they showed up, the faith of Westeros was like, what's with this incest thing? This is not a thing that we approve of. And so then the church had to like make a compromise, as history often has, because royalty is special. So then the church maintains that incest is not acceptable, except for the Targaryens, because they're like the ruling family, and they have, it's like the special exemption of the Targaryens, which is just like, but that's why I love Fire and Blood, because it reads like real history, because like there's constantly stuff like that in history where these like weird concessions and agreements have to be made, and like weird alliances are made. So like the idea that the church would be like, no, you can't do that because that's against our faith, but we know you're going to keep doing it and we need to be on your good side. So we're going to say you and you alone can do it, and it's totally within the faith for you to do it. Yeah, I don't think it's mentioned that Emma and Viserys are cousins, but she looks like she'd be related. So I don't think, I think people could surmise that cousins or not, they are probably related. Yeah, that scene Alicent is made to the bad guy for calling out the incest. Yeah, kinda. She's the puritanical weirdo. And then Alicent's son marries her daughter. Yeah, because we know that Alicent is nothing if not a hypocrite.
Yeah.
Little Miss like puritanical, and then her son is over here, not just married to his sister, but also like sleeping around and raping people. And she's like, I mean,
we're just cover this up. Yeah.
So yeah. Well, I'm excited for season 2. My understanding is that they finished writing it before the writer's strike. So as far as I know, production has not been stopped or slowed by the writer's strike for that, at least. So that's something.
Yeah. Although, yeah, it's hard because like I know normally writers are still making like small changes and stuff as they're filming, so which I think they can't do as long as.
Although in the case of House of the Dragon, it was Paddy Considine, the actor himself, who was like, this is how I want the character to be. Just need him back. Back from the dead. Yeah, I mean, it's
that's probably the case. Yeah,
there's no way for the book to confirm or deny, because they don't have the kind of medicine that could like say that. But like, yes, miscarriages, and also the fact that there's I think they say it in Game of Thrones, not in House of the Dragon, that like they say that every time the Targaryens have a child, the gods toss a coin, that like, are they going to be crazy or not? And it's because like there's so much incest. That's why they're all so
Yeah,
mentally ill.
yeah. It's a lot.
Yeah, there is well, sometimes. There's some people that just have a lot of miscarriages in the book, which can also be like a not incest, not Targaryen thing. It's just like a human thing.
Mhm.
But there are weird circumstances and some like straight up like kind of like horror circumstances where like the babies are kind of dragony, which
Yeah.
is
I do agree with this, that it's kind of refreshing to see Rhaenyra portrayed as the good guy when she's more comfortable with her sexuality. I agree with that.
and
That was kind of
also
how I felt.
sleeping with her uncle.
Yeah, less that part.
Big ol' mess. But
Yeah,
yeah, it's a good show. I'm glad you finally saw the light and watched it.
I did.
And then when the new season comes out, whenever that will be, you can be joining with the rest of the world in watching it
Yes.
week to week.
Mhm. I could.
Maybe you'll read Fire and Blood before it airs.
When is it supposed to come out? This fall?
No, I think they've only
No.
just started filming it.
Okay. Okay.
I think 2024. I'm
Okay.
not sure if they've set a certain
Well,
date.
it just depends, I guess, because we're, when we get to it, if we are like tentatively reading the series next year.
So I know you like Rings of Power, but
I don't listen.
just
They're
say it. Say it.
they're such different
Just
shows.
say it.
I don't want to compare them because they're like vastly different shows. I
One
like
is
them
good and
for
one is bad.
different No, I like them for different reasons. They're different vibes. I would watch them in different headspaces.
Which one has better writing?
House of the Dragon has better writing. Yeah. I
Yeah. I was shocked by how fun it is to read Fire and Blood because everyone, including me, is like it's written like a history book, and you're like, wow, that's gonna be boring as hell. It's actually really fun to read. It's very juicy, spicy, and filled with like winks, nods, and intrigue. And
That's fun.
yeah,
Well, it may happen.
all right, I'll take that as a definitely. Well, thank you for finally watching it, and thank you for talking about it with me.
Yeah,
And
this was fun.
just know that this has only further encouraged me to shove things your way because I have a good track record of not only getting you to do it, but also getting you to like the thing once you've done it. So
That is
we'll
that is
carry
true.
on.
Oh, you know what?
Yes,
I
Milford is iconic.
started but have not finished. I started watching Hamilton.
I mean, I think before we went live, or like the first right when after we went live, I did make a Hamilton reference, and as I made the reference, I was like, Bethany's not gonna understand what I'm talking about.
I watched part of it. I watched like, I don't know, 40 minutes of it or something with my kid, and then it started getting a little bit, I was like, okay.
It's not for kids, but it's not like horribly racy.
No, there were some things that I was like, "Oh, I get to explain some things now that I didn't really want to explain right now. Good." And then he was like, "Can we not watch this? I'm bored." I was like, "Okay, I'll finish it later."
How dare.
Um, but I did start it.
Well, I look forward to you finishing it and being like, dang, I really wish I had watched that years ago.
I mean, I couldn't have watched it years ago. We've only had Disney Plus for like a few months.
You could have gotten Disney Plus when they put it on Disney Plus. It's not like you couldn't do that.
It costs money though. And we didn't do it until our phone company decided to pay for our Netflix bill, and then I was like, "Hey, now we can get Disney Plus."
I just started watching Succession now that it's about to end. So,
I have not seen Succession. No.
but as I started watching Succession, I was like, so first law, but make it modern?
But I am caught up on the ultimatum queer love.
Okay, I think it's time to end the stream. House of the Flying
I
Beast.
did I did like it.
Because how could you not?
You know.
All right. Well,
Right.
I look forward to forcing you to do other things.
I'm
and
sure you will.
talking about sending you all the House of the Dragon memes now that you'll get them.
Yes.
And then very soon also Hamilton memes when you get them.
I just thought it was hilarious that like one of our podcast viewers literally tagged us in a TikTok video making fun of me for not having watched it.
Because it's
I was
truly
like,
shock.
okay, fine. I'm gonna watch
Is that
it.
why? It wasn't me. I can't claim credit for this. It was the TikTok that you were like,
It
you
was
know
the
what?
TikTok.
I
That
should
was the
watch
final
it.
straw where I was like, fine, I'll go watch
Because
it.
it's one thing if I'm telling you it's a culture crime to not have seen it, but to realize that more people than just me are saying it's a culture crime not to have seen it. Yeah. I wasn't being hyperbolic.
Okay. I was like, people are now making fun of me for this, so I guess I need to do something about it. Yeah,
It's for your own good. Okay.
thank you.
Well, House of the Dragon is great. And I look forward to more. Thanks everybody for
Yeah.
coming and chatting with us. And yeah, we'll see ya some other time soon.
Right.